Hey there, welcome to episode 66 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording episode 66 on this Friday, May 31st, 2024. The end of May already. Summer is right around the corner, although here in Vegas, I believe we are, if we haven't already, we're very, very, very close to triple-digit high temperatures for the day. Welcome to the desert. Today, though, and by the way, that's something that appears in the news every day, the current weather. But today we are speaking about News Blips, which is another in the series on the startup project that I myself am pursuing. And this is an audio program about entrepreneurialism and innovation in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem here in the greater Vegas area. And so that's what we're doing. It is an information sharing platform. Not quite a traditional local news site. We got plenty of those. We already know how well they work. So News Blips, what's going on? I did mention in the previous episode 65 that I would touch on a couple of issues that came up during my multi-part series on the fun economy, spelled F1UN. Because if there's anything that's fun, it's the Formula One debacle. So let's get started with today's episode. If you do have your episode description, wherever you found this audio program, you will find the show notes with the links for today. Today I'm actually going to go, I do this frequently anyway, but I'm going to actually make the links a part of the actual discussion because this is not a news program, but these are examples, just like when I did the F1 fun economy. The intent is not to talk about the news, so I am referring to news articles. I'm talking about the topic, in that case, of the Formula One impact, the fun economy, and small business, and so on. So here, these are going to be examples of things that we would think would be easier to find information out about as they are ongoing. So we'll see. Anyway, so the links section. If you can see it, you can follow along. You can read these later. I forgot in my notes. I normally start off with my shameless self-promotion links. I've noticed that I forgot to put them in here, but I will. The buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page is where you can find links to this audio program and my 3 others as of this moment. I create 4 new audio programs each week, one for each of the 4, I should say episodes, for each of the programs that I produce each week. So Let's Innovate for Vegas on Tuesday, Quaggling Sand on Wednesday, FFS Talk on Thursday, and this Cafe Genius Impresarios on Friday. If and when we get guest booking to start happening again, the actual recording date and the release date may vary depending on availability and so on. We'll try to stick to that publishing schedule to make the episodes public. Also, if we do eventually, which I would like to do, if we do add sort of a streaming chat of some sort or video, or to have multiple people on and have discussions about various entrepreneurial innovation related topics, that will fit into the schedule somewhere as well. And it sounds like a busy week already. And I only ask that people listen. You are under no obligation to buy me a coffee, although projects are powered by coffee. The other usual suspect in the self-promotion ring is Ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. That is where I will start to make announcements about website launches and whatnot. It's been a topic I've talked about forever. When you are an army of one, everything is the same priority. No delegation of tasks here. So yeah, so I'm always annoyed that it's on the list and it's still on the list. But I will place information about new websites, changes to projects, that is adding video perhaps, or live streaming, or both, or something. We'll figure it out, whatever works. And of course, the Innovate for Vegas stuff is on there, the GitHub repos and so on. I will point out, to be clear, Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a 501c3 public charity. It's a Nevada nonprofit, and it is not you can donate to support the organization. That does not support me. That is to say, that is an all-volunteer organization. There's no salaries or compensation of any kind. I know that sounds crazy. It is. It is absolutely insane. But so if you do feel the need to or desire to participate financially or in any other way with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, it is attempting to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. What is the ideation, innovation, implementation? Well, a lot of things, and that will depend on the creative people who participate. And of course, identifying things that we should spend more time on since we live here. So there you go. Making information awareness a better thing is an Innovate for Vegas Foundation project called MyMuni, the user interface for a smart city is the tagline. So it is an open source project. What I am working on is a startup built on an open source project. So we can monetize it and in fact, in a value for value or similar model, attempt to make volunteer time working on open source projects something that provides some sort of financial benefit or other benefits to the people who donate their time, contribute creative works, etc. Absolutely not a new idea. So I've stolen this idea from all other open source projects that have people paid to work on them. So we're just trying to make sure that people who want to volunteer are not volunteering for free all the time. I know that goes against some notions of volunteerism. We can do both. So on with the, I didn't read the show notes. That's one of the things I forgot to do though. News is a business. The summary. Attention and clicks matter, and competition is fierce. And revenue is not. Profit certainly not. As a normal person, how do we keep track of the important things going on close to home or that matter, or both, when the tools at our disposal have an agenda driven by revenue? Everything starts with local. Well, everything should, which is where we are beginning with our information sharing platform. So this will not be an attempt to take over the New York Times or the Washington Post or the CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. The list goes on. All these traditional media platforms do their thing. This is not an attempt to become another news site. Here in the Greater Vegas area, the Las Vegas Sun and the Review Journal are the statutory official news sites for Southern Nevada. And as in it's written into our revised statutes. And there are other local news sites. There are topical websites that focus on real estate or sports. Have a link to one of them, at least one. And there's just all manner of informative websites, not to mention countless content creators and their use of platforms. So Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, maybe they have their own websites, Twitter, X, et cetera, et cetera. So there's plenty of a fire hose of information, or rather data, and in some cases noise. And so this is a project about doing things slightly different in a novel way to share information and make discovery of that information a little bit easier. And it's a big experiment. So version 1 may sort of work, and version 1.1 may work a little bit better. 1.2 might work a little bit worse. The nature of doing something new. There will be no hardware to purchase. So if you've seen the debacles around Humane and the Humane pin that was announced, was it shipping yet? It must be shipping. But it basically end of 2023, early 2024, both the Humane pin and the Rabbit R1 made big headlines for making big promises and delivering very few of them in an expensive product with the Humane pin and a not quite as expensive but arguably substantially less functional Rabbit R1. And I will say, having shipped hardware, I've worked for companies like Apple and Philips and UMax, Intel, pardon me, and I worked in the Newton group at Apple. So shipping the first version of a product, there are always going to be issues. When it's hardware, it's even harder because you have what's called a sunk cost. You've built hardware. You must sell it. Keeping it in a warehouse, keeping the hardware, hundreds of units, millions of units, that's just going to keep costing money. So if you're a startup and you are launching a hardware project, first of all, you're crazy. But second of all, there's a clock ticking, right? There's a time is money, time value of money, non-trivial when you are warehousing hardware. So when people have pre-purchased, I guess, the Rabbit R1, for example, or maybe I think they did it with the Humane Pin also, you want to deliver them their hardware. And the notion is always, and this goes with your phone or your tablet or your laptop, or a lot of more and more modern technology is enabling what's called an over-the-air update. So there's always a presumption when you're developing some project that the first version, in fact, I talked about this when I was working at Apple, I think, in a Quackling Stand episode. There's a notion in project management called the point release. Like, we have to be ready to ship version 1. So at some point you cut off changes. We used to call it change control. Now, that's a long story, but don't even mention that nowadays. The kids nowadays will freak out. Like, what do you mean change control? So we would be very careful about what went into version 1, any last minute data loss bugs, data critical. And everything else was moved to the point release. So version 1.1, check it in on the 1.1 source code branch or however anyway. So the releasing of the hardware, because that's a sunk cost with the presumption that you're going to update it in software, that's a real thing. So the problem with hardware, you got to get it out the door. So whatever version 1 looks like, it is what it is. And when people trash it, like, this is horrible, it doesn't match expectations, the hype was on another planet compared to what they've shipped out, there's really no tolerance in that case for, but wait, we're releasing version 1.1. And there's some other drama going on with Rabbit. But the bottom line is expectations about a brand new product in a brand new category can sometimes be set incorrectly. So part of my efforts with talking about this early on, and it's an open source project, so there won't be anything hidden behind closed doors as far as the open source parts go. Will there be some proprietary things? Or who knows? I can't say at this point. So it'll be like mostly open source. I can commit to that, and then we'll see how things unfold. You never know if in order to use a certain thing, you aren't allowed to actually open source it, depending on the licensing of it. So we'll see about specific tools, like, for example, if there's some AI model for something, or I don't know. So I don't want to say 100% open source today and then have to backpedal on that. So I'll just say that the MyMuni project will be 100% open source, and things that we deploy based on the MyMuni project may require other tools. And in fact, it probably won't even be directly assembled into, like, it won't be one big thing. It will be like, oh, we might have to use a service or an outside API or something. So hopefully that will become clear as the design evolves. Okay, all that said, the actual links, I have my witty cap on today. So first link, that's a nice stadium you got there, is an article from LV Sports Biz. Probably not in your, if you're a sports person, maybe it is, but probably not in your normal news consumption stack. It's from May 17th. So pretty current. So Clark County owes a lot of money on the stadium. And so they're talking about how much it is and how they can pay off the debt and all that stuff. And it's interesting because the devil's always in the details with stadium projects. And in fact, the next link, there's a whole website and a whole book about that very topic. So where public money is being spent and where usually profit is private. So building the stadium will use public money. profit, we'll just let those go to the private companies. So that's often the case. So diving into the financing of the Raider Stadium, the Allegiant Stadium, obviously the name Allegiant is on it. So you can look at what monies are associated with the branding of the building and the project and where monies go and so on and so on. So this is an article about the state of affairs of the current debt level paying off the Raiders construction. So flip through that article if you're curious. Generally speaking, though, that the stadium was the construction of it and is and will be a non-trivial element of the professional sports pillar of the fun economy. And we'll also get to one about the hotel occupancy comparisons. So I've selected a few links from a vast array of likely interesting topics that will have lasting impact on people in different parts of the city, but also generally, and not even the city, but more the county, the greater Vegas area. So this is by no means a comprehensive collection of headlines and topics, but they're reasonably current and they're sort of high profile, but these are examples. Could we interest you in this other nicer stadium? Right. So these are my creative headlines. But the actual article is on a website called Field of Schemes, and it's a companion website for a book about the joy of publicly funded sports stadiums and where the profits go and whatnot. So if you're interested in that at all, it might be interesting to check that out. Almost everywhere, whenever you hear a new team or a new stadium and a team is coming to town and they want to build a new stadium, you should always cross your arms, raise an eyebrow, and say, I happen to live near the 49ers stadium when they were moving to Santa Clara. My parents lived very near the Cardinals stadium in West Phoenix, otherwise known as Glendale, Arizona. And we have the Allegiant Stadium here. We'll eventually perhaps have the stadium for a baseball team that may or may not be the former Oakland Athletics. Who knows? So the headline is like Vegas. The Vegas A's stadium is either 100% on track or dead on arrival, depending. And then it goes into some details. A deeper dive on this will include things like the A's are going to Sacramento, or maybe Utah. I think they settled on Sacramento. The funding plan for the A's, the owners of the A's, the Athletics, to hold up their end of the stadium bargain, not completely clear. Their exit from Oakland was not without issue, so it's not going well. The Tropicana is going to suffer the brunt of the pain. I mean the physical structure, since it is already literally being like pre-demoed. Like they're doing some initial demolition with what is it? I guess you would call like a steam shovel back in the old days, but heavy equipment knocking things down. Probably structures that are. I don't know. I don't do that for a living, so I have no idea. But I do know that they've begun. So the Tropicana is essentially on a one-way trip out of Vegas. And if the stadium thing falls through, there will be some egg on some faces. And I myself would be curious to know really how much deliberation and consideration went into the planning phase. If you look at this next item, more Formula One lawsuit news. So here again, probably a site you check frequently for local news, cardplayer.com. I actually found this article on another website maybe a week or two ago also. So this is not brand new. It's Ellis Island is suing the county and Formula One and maybe whoever they can sue. So Card Player is covering how Ellis Island lost a bunch of money because of construction and other issues. So the actual lawsuit will be more specific, and we should be able to see that at some point. So when county officials and people with a business agenda or a political agenda, when those people are in charge of planning things like, should we tear down one thing and put in another stadium because it supports our notion of a fun economy and we want to make big points with the big players, as in the big money? Maybe, but do they consider things like, oh, that's going to be yet another absolute cluster when it comes to traffic going down Tropicana, going down the strip at Tropicana, freeway impact, so environmental impact in general? Who cares? We got to build a cool stadium that's completely bizarre, doesn't really fit into, in my opinion, doesn't fit into the look of the strip. But that's never stopped anybody doing anything. So interesting time. So another lawsuit. There's already another issue with small businesses. I think there's some sort of a class action lawsuit going on. I don't know if LV Sports Biz or Card Player will be covering those, or maybe Field of Schemes. So it would be cool if there was just a place to go and see some feedback, perhaps some opinions from the small business owners directly impacted, rather than a human interest story that turns into a minor 2 or 3 minute clip. If you get to the Clark County Commission meeting, or if you have a special meeting where they review your concerns after the fact, but they make big promises about, well, we'll do it better for 2024. And by the way, construction for the Formula One race, which is occurring in November of 2024 in the Greater Vegas area, is about to commence. So look for more disruption. I know, the brand new to Vegas, road construction. By the way, road construction, historically plotted on a map, might be an interesting thing to make available. Why do we keep tearing up and repaving the same street over and over? Speaking of Formula One and Allegiant Stadium, hotel occupancy comparisons between Formula One from November of 2023 and the Super Bowl, which was held in February of 2024. Both on the Strip. One did better than the other. You can read the article to find out. And that is on thecentersquare.com. That appears to be a news platform that has different localities. So maybe a little bit like the, what is it called? Is it the Pod? I can't remember what it was called. It'll come to me. The AOL bought them. Anyway, it's a platform that basically says, here's a platform for you if you want to do local news. So in this case, it's a Nevada-centric article about hotel occupancy comparisons. This data should actually be on the LVCVA website, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. But I wanted to give an example of yet more news coverage coming from all corners of the planet. Here's another cool one. Inside the tech scene in Forbes magazine, of all places. Unfortunately, it is from May 23rd, 2024. So it's from last week. Unfortunately, in this context, it's inside the tech scene of the Bay Area. So the San Francisco Bay Area is, always will be Silicon Valley. The notion that the Greater Vegas area will be the next Silicon Valley, which I myself am on a personal campaign to put a stop to using those terms, when we admit that we could be a better Vegas rather than trying to be an entirely different place without being anything like that place. The corollary, of course, is that the Bay Area is not trying to be the next Las Vegas. They're just the Bay Area or Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley has card houses. They have gambling. They have restaurants. They have shows. They have trade shows. They have sports. They have professional sports. So yeah, we're completely the same, but not. So the Forbes article is about the tech scene, the innovation culture or culture of innovation in the Bay Area. By the way, with AI getting all the new money and work from home policies flipping, so going back to the old, oh, you got to be in the office. Guess what? There is a return to the Bay Area, a return to financial chaos or greatness or something. So look for more increases in property values beyond anything imaginable. Crazy. But it is interesting that there is a way to cover and make known to the world your culture of innovation, the tech scene, and so on in a place like Silicon Valley. In a place like the Greater Vegas area, you will get similar coverage, but of Formula One construction debacles and lawsuits and stadium controversies and so on. Now, I'm not trying to be overly nitpicky about those things, but the fact is you're just not going to get the coverage of the culture of innovation or the tech scene in the greater Vegas area because it's just not interesting to the world. They're interested in what Formula One's doing. What are the Raiders doing? Are the A's moving there? Did someone win another $1 million in a strip casino or maybe downtown? Right? These are the things that actually make some news. Now, if you go for some niche news sites, you might find a little bit more information about some more focused topics. But the problem with this whole notion is if you are in the greater Vegas area, which is where I am located, if I am curious about the local culture of innovation, good luck. There's really no reporting on it. Now, remember, I am the managing director, and I'm not the executive director because I think that sounds too flashy. We're not really concerned with titles, but so I do a lot of the day job stuff for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. I've reached out to the schools. I've tried to host hackathons here, various attempts to engage and sort of beginnings of development of a culture of innovation. So I can say we really don't have a strong culture of innovation yet. One of the ways, aside from effort, injection of energy into the system to try to foment some sort of interest and excitement and cultural development. If we have that, but nobody knows about it, it's difficult to develop some momentum. So a media platform that would discuss, cover, talk about, be excited about, generate excitement about local culture of innovation culture, whether it's education-ish, like closer to students in school, still in school, pursuing degrees at the colleges, or still in high school, perhaps. I think the best time to begin a focused education on innovation is in 7th grade, age 12. We can get into that another time if I haven't. I think I've done this already, but so we get very little coverage about local innovation. The startup scene, do you know anything about that? Why not? Because nobody talks about it. I've reached out to our local media specifically, and they're like, maybe. So if we build a stadium or kill someone, we'll get some attention. If you are starting a company, maybe consider the stadium. Try not to kill anybody. But the bottom line really is that our fun economy does not make talking about entrepreneurial innovation shiny and interesting. It makes it very practical and only interesting if you're developing a unicorn. So, you're going to be a $1 billion company in 7 years. I think it's 7, 5 or 7. I think it's 7. So otherwise, just not interesting. But if you're just a normal person, maybe you're a solo consultancy like I am. I have my own separate business. Maybe you have a small startup. Maybe you moved here from somewhere else. Maybe you graduated from UNLV and you're sticking around to pursue a startup with your classmates. There are those things here. All of these things exist. You will never read about them anywhere unless hopefully they have a website. But do you know what to look for? If you don't know what to look for, you will be relegated to LinkedIn. So if you aren't connected to the right person and the algorithm doesn't favor you, you may never see posts or learn about their LinkedIn page or whatever. I will say the Cafe Genius page on LinkedIn is substantially less. It's not even worth maintaining it. No traffic, so it's not worth posting content. And then when you don't post content, it doesn't get any traffic. So you are absolutely subjugated by the algorithm. The Innovate for Vegas page similarly has 700 and some followers, but no engagement, even though there's a podcast posted every week. I guess that's not enough. So if you rely on tools like LinkedIn, which have a profit motive, just like I talked about in the introduction, the summary for today's episode, their agenda is not your agenda. It's certainly not the agenda of the greater Vegas area. So I have my final link here is an actual local innovator with actual local innovation. It's a Fox 5 Vegas website. So I don't think they did a video. Did they do a video? Often they'll do like a lifestyle segment. So they'll do like a 2-minute video segment on their televised news, and everybody's watching television, of course. So you'd have to catch it on the web. So if you're following local news, or maybe it's on Instagram, however you reach people with traditional news media. So David Rosales is a local entrepreneur. He developed a product and I think an entire company around the initial product. I think he also does consultancy, but about catalytic converter theft prevention or detection device. And now he has a prototype, it looks like, because it's a breadboarded prototype. So it's to detect copper theft, which is becoming an ever more troubling issue in Southern Nevada. If you got, luckily you don't have copper fillings. They would take the fillings right out of your head. So everything copper is subject to theft. So he's building a detection or other crime prevention or alert device. I think it's a notification device. So you can read about his invention, his innovation. It's a brief article, and then you go way down to the bottom of the article, and there's a link to his website, and you can go from there. That is the only time you will ever see his company, this product, this prototype, ever mentioned ever. That's not funny, but the fact is, if you're not killing someone or building a stadium or tearing up roads for a professional sporting event or doing something grand, I've said that it's very, very cynical, but if you kill someone in Vegas, you're going to be on the news all the time. If you invent something truly novel, truly useful, you're going to be on the news once. It's sad. It's true. So discovery of local innovation, the local tech scene, as I was referring to in the Forbes article about the Bay Area, recognizing differences over time between the amount of successful entrepreneurialism. By the way, entrepreneurs, you can be an entrepreneur without starting a tech company. You could be entrepreneurial and do a lot of different things. I personally classify small business, people who start a small business like a restaurant or a bar or consultancy or any kind of novel service business, or you do maybe anything. You could be anything. You are entrepreneurial. It's not, in my opinion. I think some people argue like, no, that means you have to be. We get into trouble because then we stop recognizing people who are doing real work to make a new kind of business or a new type of an existing business. That is, someone opens a cool bar, they'll get some coverage here in Vegas because it's a bar. If you open a new other thing, you probably won't get much attention. Like, it's just another type of retail store, until somebody shows up with their camera phone and says, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" And then you kind of have to organically spark some interest. And that's unfortunate because entrepreneurialism is already hard. So if we were actually putting our virtual money where our hype is, if this is such a great place for entrepreneurs, we should be celebrating that. And the first step of that is is making them discoverable. So a non-trivial component of this information sharing platform is a focus on locally interesting things, and that includes the local entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and the life forms within it, the entrepreneurs and the innovators. And those might be the same people, but sometimes they are not. So I spent a lot of time on the topics. So now we're on to the sort of general part about the effort that we're pursuing with this startup. So everything is local. This is not strictly true, of course, across the board. The world is a big place. There's a lot of crazy things going on today. But on any given day, the things happening closer to where you live, where you work, where you go to school, or getting between them, anything involving moving around the greater Vegas area is always a challenge. They're important to you, while the events on the globe are not as important. Now, this doesn't mean they are not important. As if you're trying to get to work and there's nothing but a wall of stopped traffic in front of you on the freeway, you are not thinking, man, I wish Ukraine could get sorted out. You're thinking, I got to get to work. Why is this happening? So that is what I mean. It doesn't diminish the problems around the world or the goings on, but at any given moment, there are pressing concerns, there are important matters, there are things that will affect you directly, your friends, your family, your near-term future. So in the global geopolitical scene, they are blips, but they are important to you blips. So it's important sometimes to be aware with greater, finer detail the news, the events, the concerns that will impact you directly closer to home, local. So very often the local news outlets are covering a broad swath of potentially interesting topics. And this is true. If you visit the Las Vegas Review Journal, I think it's reviewjournal.com, review-journal.com, I believe. I don't go there very much. It's essentially just a wall of headlines, and it's a paywall. So you have to subscribe to read actual articles. You can read the first paragraph, and that's fine. That's their business model. So I'm not picking on them for that. But they have a rather dense homepage, and then you really can't get a real sense of what's going on with any particular thing because it's very episodic, traditional print media presentation style. So you would have to keep up with this wall of headlines and very, very brief deck, the description, right? The summary information. In print media, the deck is you put a headline, maybe a subhead. If you are going to put something like a headline and a subhead on the front page, you might put a teaser, which is a sort of a more enticing version of a deck. The deck is a block of text above the main body of the article, and it is usually a quick summary to kind of set you up to read the article. Nowadays, you'll see something like a 3 bullet item deck. So it's essentially, here's the thing, here's the specific thing that we're talking about as related to the thing, and then here's a quick little, like a 1 sentence catching you up on what the thing, why the thing is important, or something, things like this. So you're seeing sort of variations on a theme, but the deck is probably as much as people read nowadays, because the deck becomes the description that goes in the open graph summary content, right? So when you post it on your Facebook or your LinkedIn or whatever, it's going to pull the headline, the picture if you have one, and the description, which would traditionally be the deck. So the body of the article will contain the inverted pyramid and so on and so on. So traditional news reporting is all about getting your attention with the headline. That's what headlines are for. And because they're supposed to catch your attention when you're walking by the newsstand on the sidewalk. So now they have to compete against a pile of, all across literally across the map, all over the map, if I can not mix metaphors. So all over the map, some things are critical to you, some things are not important, but they are critical to others, et cetera, et cetera. So it's trying to serve all, and at the end of the day, to get people to click on things so that they will watch video ads or generally consume, generate ad impressions or click through ads, depending on their scheme, how they generate business from advertising. I'm not trying to make that sound illegitimate. The way that you make money at a traditional media outlet is subscribers and advertising. That's it. Been there, done that. So the main traditional verticals: sports, business, government and politics, crime, weather, of course. I always tell people, why is the weather always at the top, like in the hero section or above it, actually, in almost in the top nav? For any news website, there's always going to be a little, you can call it a weather bug if you like. So maybe an icon showing the sun or some clouds or something, and then a number like 98F. That's it. Okay, that's the current weather. They could add one more icon, which is some indication of the level of the primary and really only water source for Southern Nevada. One more icon could say, hey, we're almost out of water again. But they don't do that. I don't know why. That should be something. Almost like it's something we plan to include in our little adventure. So you basically are breaking news down into these gross topics, and then you deliver, maybe 3 items per. So you got your top sports news, your top government. I checked the Review Journal today, You can check it anytime you want. I don't read the Sun, usually the Las Vegas Sun, sometimes, but I mostly flip through the review journal. But I'm not totally fond of either, again, because they're essentially print media on a web page, on a website. So it doesn't really add value to the news hunting experience. It's just words. So it's just another place to find more words about a particular topic. It might converge with something I'm interested in. Certainly they don't care about anything I'm working on. Been there, done that too. So, well, and sometimes they post news from other sources. So external, that's often the national news. They'll pull AP or other news services, etc. Which is, I'm not really against any of those things. You got to pay the rent. So they have to monetize this content. But I personally feel the approach is very heavy-handed, brute force, if you like. They're just throwing more headlines. So the homepage is more and more headlines so that you'll click on something, and more ads and paywalls. And I think they've stopped doing I think they call it a roadblock. Is it a roadblock? No, I can't remember. It's I guess it's almost like an interstitial ad where you'd visit the site and then it would trick you. It would delay like a second or two, maybe load time or whatever, and then it would create this giant full page. I don't think it was video, but it was a huge image, and then scroll down for news or something. So you'd go to the bottom, scroll down. So you basically have to push this ad out of the way, which it placed in front of you, so it pushed the news content down to display this thing. It was very obnoxious. I don't see them doing that anymore. Maybe it'll come back. Who knows? But end of the day, it's traditional news. It's headlines to grab your attention, clickbait, as they call it now. And I personally think we can do better. How? Why? Well, news is old, but data and information are new. Actually, data and information are also old, but news as a business is old. It's investigative journalists, so the journalism part is fine. That's where the real work is. That's where the legitimate work is, in my opinion. So these are the people that go out and find information. They interview people. They interview experts. They don't try to make assumptions on their own. The really good investigative journalists will not use the word obviously, because that's why they're writing the article, because it's not obvious. So they'll be deliberate, and they will be researched. They will be detail oriented. They will be professional in how they approach. If they have biases, they will be disclosed in some way. They will try to write from an even viewpoint and somewhere in the middle, somewhere some moderate or centrist if possible. Otherwise, either way, you will know what they're trying to accomplish. That's the best of the investigative journalists. Then you have journalists that are super opinionated, and they're more of a news analysis actor. So they're probably have an agenda or something. Anyway, so the really good investigative journalists are using narrative based on data, interviews, so quotes, subject matter experts, actual data, references, like here's the actual study and here's what we got from it. Those are okay, but unfortunately news is quite often filling inches, right? So column inches in the old days, now it's pixels. But so journalism from 100 years ago is essentially where we are today. The inverted pyramid, the who, what, when, where, why, how. The headline is clickbait. The deck, I already went into that a little bit. And 80% of the article is filling in that space for ads, so they refer back to the article. Like if it's a story arc, here's the information from the previous article that you didn't read, so you get more inches. You get more column inches or more page space, so you can stick in some more ads. So okay, that's fine. I think we can do better. We have been seeing for some time actual articles. This part just bothers me, actually. Actual articles, and they may be called news, or they may be kind of next to the news. I know I come across these all the time in the useful but still always disappointing in various ways. Google News, News for You, and other like headline. They have. It's almost like we'll go ahead and curate that for you RSS feed of news that it thinks you will find interesting. So it's like a For You page, but news articles from all over the place. And I'm seeing these more and more, and it's really ridiculous. So they're appearing in news. I don't know that they call themselves news, but maybe. Somebody writes 200 to 500 words ish, 200 to 500 words. It's funny today. You actually, somebody might think 2 words, 200 to 500 words or so about a tweet or a post on X or a Truth Social post, or which are always Donald Trump. So I guess that might be newsworthy sometimes, but maybe about a picture on Instagram. So they'll stick like 2 or 3, or yeah. But it's really, and then of course a 15-second TikTok will get a giant write-up. Sometimes they'll try to reach out to the person, the author of this content, whoever it is. But sometimes it'll just be, and it got 20 million views in the first 40. Okay, great. So they're very excited about views and likes, as always. That's what the world has become. And they write an article that is like 10 times the size, just telling you what the video is about or what the picture is about. And the pictures are getting worse and worse. It's a news headline will be J-Lo impresses with bikini and banging bod or something. You're like, why is this news? Ridiculous. So no offense to J-Lo. J-Lo's fine. Hope her and Ben are doing okay, because that is also all over the news. It's not quite what I'm looking for, but there it is. So noise and distraction, and maybe some laziness on the part of the reporters, that maybe they have a writing assignment and it's to just make a 15-second TikTok video, which already has captions. Like, go ahead and transcribe the caption from the video into your article. That'll add some length. So the things we should be looking for when we look to track down our own personal set of important topics and issues and story arcs is the data that can be found along the way. So every time someone updates the status of a news story, a story that's ongoing, maybe that copper detector thing, prototype that you see, well, eventually that might become a finished product. So will they cover that? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. So if you're interested in that, though, you have 2 choices. One, you can visit the David Rosales' company website and see if there's an update. Somewhere in the middle, you can look at the LinkedIn page for his company, and then maybe the news information sharing platform doesn't act like a local news site, but maybe it goes around and says, hey, we're going to keep track of this topic, copper theft detector device by David Rosales and his company. And so and you've seen websites do this. Topics was one, PubSub Hubbub, I think it was. You could watch keywords. Obviously, Google AdWords is keyword based, so it will look for keywords. Google News is gathering the articles it thinks you will read based on what you read and search for. So it tries to stuff you with, here, this is something you might like. So somewhere there's something that's a little bit more focused locally and less algorithmic. So rather than making some guesses, you might say, hey, I'm interested in knowing more about this. And so maybe if there's any announcements, I'm doing a little hand waving right now. The fact is that everybody's so geared towards being found by Google's search engine. So they do their search engine optimization, which now you've been feeding Google all of this for decades and catering to their every whim and bending over backwards to design your entire online presence around their algorithms and about robots and keyword searches and optimizing for all that. And now they can go pluck exactly what they want from all these places and generate their own content. So that'll be kind of fun. So local information sharing doesn't have to be about strictly following news posts, although where should a press release be posted for maximum non-algorithmically controlled, can you visit the LinkedIn page and see what's going on with this product? Oh, you have to sign in first. You have to log in. So how can we publicize the events going on in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem so that they're visible to people, discoverable, even if people aren't here or have no idea who David Rosales is or what his company is, but they're, oh, look, there is innovation going on in Vegas. So how do you do that? Well, it's not always, it might be a press release, right? A press release can be published and you can publish it somewhere where everyone will see it. And that's one of the things, that's on the list, on the to-do list. So the ability to publicize in a simple way, press releases are words, what you're doing, what your startup, what progress. Hey, we got our funding. Hey, we launched our prototype. Hey, we're having a launch party. Hey, come and check out our prototype. Hey, do you want to be in our beta? There's all sorts of things where reaching out to local people you might run into casually now and then, including them in the process makes them a part of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, but actually makes them a part of it. And then information that can be derived from this, like asset maps, like, hey, here's the kind of innovation happening in this area. Here are the people doing it. Here are the resources they have at their disposal, which you might have at your disposal, right? Maker spaces, prototype manufacturing, 3D printers or otherwise, machine shops, woodworking shops, people who do this work, consultancy, services, restaurant consultants, you name it, right? What do we have here that can help you and your team, help you and your co-founders? You're not going to find that in the Review Journal. You're not going to find that in the Las Vegas Sun. You may not find that anywhere. So if we're going to have an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and talk about it as though it were the next Silicon Valley, we should be able to describe what that means, and we should be able to describe progress along the pathway to that goal. I was almost going to say unattainable, but who knows? You never know. But today we are not going to be the next Silicon Valley. Maybe we'll make some adjustments and it will enter the realm of possibility. I personally think we should focus on being an innovation destination, not an innovation hub, but that's been other episodes in the past. So if we can not only capture data like product announcement, press release, asset map, maybe investment capital density, entrepreneurial demographics, resource availability, geographics, right? Like which parts of town have better this, more access to that, whatever it is. So as we get these data points, open data capture platform, another Innovate for Vegas project, if we can allow more people to contribute to the open data sets that we have and create new ones, we can start to see the picture of information, or the information picture. A picture can be drawn from all this data that is actual information. Like, what does it really mean that there's this many copper thefts? And if you put pins in a map and you can show where they're taking place, you may be able to start seeing patterns in, like, well, where are the thieves coming from? There's actual math for that. I've said this before about missing pets. If you can take missing pets, here's where they went missing, here's where they were found, plot that on a map. I don't know, I'm just hypothesizing here. You might start seeing that dogs that disappear end up being found a mile away, half a mile away, around the corner. Maybe they all converge at a meeting spot and they're having their secret meetings about, like, this AI stuff is really going to screw us over. Woof. So, but nobody really pays attention to that. So that's been a personal curiosity. So deriving information from data is another thing that we can be doing. You don't find that in traditional news platforms. You might find it in editorial, but mostly it's left to the reader. There will be investigative journalists who will interview subject matter experts. They may draw a conclusion, but these episodic articles along a topic arc are really just continuously presenting you with information and some opinion and some data, and the ability to assess that for yourself is almost left to chance, I think. This is not universal, but it's just an observation, especially about local media here in Vegas, especially when it comes to anything off the beaten path, which is essentially the fun economy. So a new approach is needed, but it isn't really so new. So some old ideas can be new again. The use of syndication feeds, so RSS, which I think is in need of some updating, some adoption of modernity, the schema.org website, and semantic web graph data instead of XML to essentially flatten data. displaying information according to topics and organized as one does on websites like Pinterest. Or I have a favorite website called the Daily Dev, daily.dev, DEV. It has a card interface. On Daily Dev, the articles are presented in order. So you might indicate that you're interested in particular topics, and then you get in order a little card. So it's a traditional news feed, an image, a headline, a little descriptive text, but it's presented in order in a card interface. So it's easier to consume more items. And if you come back later, unlike LinkedIn, which is a travesty of user interface design, if you come back later, you might see, oh, I remember reading that one. So everything above that one, before it, you might scroll down a little bit. Oh yeah, okay, I saw that one. So everything above it is new. So if you see a familiar card, you're okay. So the dozen above it are new, and you can fit about 4 or 5 if you have your window set pretty reasonably. The take home there is that not everything is the traditional headline, subhead, deck, inverted pyramid, ads all over the place. Sometimes you just want to get a quick overview of what's happening. You can do it in the card interface. You can plot information on maps. You can use charts, or maybe some numbers or other useful information. Charts are what people normally call graphs, right? So maybe where's the water today? The temperature. So you can plot these over time. You could even use, what are they called? They're little micrographs, spark lines. You can use spark lines. Those caught on for a while. They could come back. I think that would be interesting. So you can use network graphs. You can show the relationship between things. A graph is usually connection of nodes, right? So charts, graphs, maps, timelines, these are all easily implemented nowadays. Rather than the human readable blocks of text, you can do things that are still readable, visualizable. Making them completely accessible will be a challenge. So we'll have to work with people who make use of accessibility. So rather than just making some guesses and shrugging our shoulders, we can actually do something called co-creation and say, hey, are you able to consume this information? And if the answer is no, let's do it again until the answer is yes. I've said this before about our open transit project. I talked to one rider. I see him all the time. If I catch the CX bus in the morning, he's unable to read the transit app, the horrible app that they've handed over the rider experience to, because his vision is not sufficient. He has vision, but is legally, I guess, blind, but he's definitely vision impaired. So he can see, but not well enough to make use of the transit app. And I know this is crazy to think that someone who can't see so well would be riding the bus, but they should be able to figure out when the bus is coming. So that's always been something that bothered me. So actually interacting with, co-creating accessibility with the people who need it to participate in this information sharing. Use of terms like another in a headline. These are relative terms. I just picked one, but you can, another sums it up. Another thing was found, another object exploded, whatever it is. They're assuming that you are keeping track of what the number is. So at any given moment, another just tells you, oh, okay, whatever I think it was, it's another one. It's one more. So how many marbles were in that jar? Well, another one was found. Okay, so how many? It's one more than before. So use of relative terms in headlines makes it very tricky, and it could even be anxious, could cause you some stress if you're interested in the topic, especially with episodic stories. So you read an article today, and then you read another one tomorrow and the next day, and if they keep using relative terms and you skip one, now you don't know what's going on. Oh, I don't know what they mean. They got it. So easily solved. Rather than being anecdotal and casual with use of language, maybe a dashboard, right? If I'm following a topic, have the total at the top, just like the weather. We had a blip in our human history with the pandemic converging with technology. And so every single person who ever had the notion of learning how to code wrote their own version of the John Hopkins, was it Power Builder? It was, the graphs of total fatalities, case counts, regional, plotted on a map, plotted on charts, numerical data. But the fact is, rather than saying another person got COVID. You could look and see, oh, okay, so here's the trend line. Oh, and it is +1 from yesterday. So today it was 10 and yesterday it was 9. Okay, that makes sense. So if you have the absolute data and you have proper timestamps and so on, you end up with a clearer picture. You spend less time possibly being confused or getting some angst. I mean, if you're, let's imagine a bad case where you're wondering if someone someone you care about, was in a region where there's some strife and there are some people that are taken. This could be anywhere on the planet. I'm not even picking one and making hints about it. It could be anywhere. It could be tourists in Haiti or Mexico, or pick a place. There's always a possibility. So another body was found, and you're thinking, could that be the person that I'm most interested in? It's horrible to find another body, but what is another one? Oh, it's the same one from yesterday. Okay, so different news sources use another relative to their own reporting. It may not be related to the news you saw. So use of imprecise relative terms can actually cause anxiety in those cases, but in general, it's not. It's good for clickbait. That's what it is. Ooh, another one. Let me see what that is. So information dashboards that give actual totals, as cable media is wont to do. For the Trump trial, which came to an end, I guess, yesterday, 30 May, they had almost like a web page. They had the video, and then on the sidebar, they had the total number of hours of deliberation. And then they had the counts guilty. And so they were putting these little mini dashboards on the side. Bloomberg Television was famous with their Chiron at the bottom and having sidebars with current data, stock, anything with stocks, got to have the high, low, last, etc. So making that information available, data points and the information that goes with it, rather than having to wade through clickbait headlines, is doable. So why are we not making that possible for people who are interested in events, first local, but then beyond that? So that was a long diatribe, I know, but it's bothered me for 50 some years now. You can update these dashboards with incoming data so that it's always clear at any given time where things are. Not impossible. If you can update the location of where your McDonald's order is in DoorDash, right? If you can see it on the map, you should be able to determine what any given news topic, what's going on today, the numbers, data points, information summary. Doable. Make it clearer and easier. Really, that's the bottom line. Our modern era will be rife, for better or worse, with AI-generated news. This will become tricky because generative AI is based on words that were written by somebody else. So if you take investigative journalism and you train AI on it, then you can't say, okay, now be an investigative journalist. It will write about the things it was trained on. If you ask it to describe what's going on in a region of the world, or describe a medical discovery or something, what's it going to do? It submit some questions to a subject matter expert. They can write some answers, and then the AI can train on that data or summarize it. Or so the notion that AI will be generating original content is fantastic. I mean that explicitly. Now, AI will enter the picture somewhere. Some automations are possible. I'm not against the notion of classification. So if you can use a large language model to go through some text, ideally written by a human, or maybe an image, and identify subjects, objects, topics, individuals, data values, right? So some context around them. And you could literally summarize an article by classifying what the sentiment is, if there's an update, like where it is in a timeline, who the actors are, what the circumstances are. If you can actually do that, but also have the main article, right? You're not replacing the main article. You're pulling out information to be a part of a summary, which could take the form of a network graph or a chart or a map, or the things I've described. So you're essentially saying, let me take the work of the human and make it a part of a tapestry that we're putting together around this story arc. The event took place 2 months ago. Here we are today, and here's what's developed over those 2 months. So I think that's a totally legitimate use. But if you have AI writing articles out of nowhere, who knows what you're going to get. I think that will be unhealthy. So the way AI integrates into the scheme I'm describing will ideally be closer to what I described. It's more of a summary or a classification, but not throwing away or obscuring the original content, right? This should augment the original content, either probably with copyrights and whatnot, linking to it with attribution, like a bibliography, and journalism, news platforms are within legal right to actually do that, to actually refer to other publication content, to excerpt and so on. Attribution for the purpose of news reporting, part of protected use of copyright material. So yeah, I'm okay with transparent use of AI tools as part of an automation effort to make it more clear, to help describe and to classify different pieces of information. So we'll see what we can unfold there, but that will be kind of the leading edge of what we want to accomplish. And so we'll have to see who's interested in participating in that on the Innovate for Vegas side. So that, if I can take a breath, that is today's episode of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program about our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. This project sounds enticing, I hope. It's interesting to me. And ideally, as an open source project, we'll be able to entice others from different parts of the planet to participate in the general platform and then to maybe deploy it in their localities. And we can develop some notions about what works and what doesn't in different areas. Clearly in the Vegas area, the focus on frost, frozen pipes, ice, sheets of ice forming, we do have Mount Charleston, but so there's snow up there, and hey, every once in a while something will happen and it'll shut down all road traffic because the road is out due to weather considerations. So I'm not even saying that we don't have snow, but we don't have as much snow as like Michigan or Philadelphia or upstate New York, Buffalo. So there are people in different parts of the world who would have a slightly different angle from which to approach the sharing of information local first. So really touching on local issues and making sure that, I've said this before, beehives, you can find some aggressive bees sometimes here in Vegas. And only recently did I discover the official phone number to call if you find a beehive. And so that should be much more easily discoverable than it was. Am I going to tell you where it is? Nope. Stay tuned. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo for updates about these various audio program projects, the GitHub projects that go with the projects I'm working on. Some useful information, I hope, and hopefully more coming as more things start to unfold and yet come together. So thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.